rising today because I'm proud to present this legislation allowing a statue honoring United States Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to be placed on the state capitol.
A controversial bill to create a statue honoring Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas hits the Senate floor for a second time. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on Legislative Day 18. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. Once again, I'm in my home studio in isolation after testing positive for COVID-19, and I'll talk to our great guest joining us in our GPB studio for tonight's show. We're going to spend some time talking about several housing bills filed this session on everything from workforce issues and taxes to rent regulation and homeowners associations. We'll hear from lawmakers trying to help Georgians with issues affecting where they live and how much they spend for it. Democrats are pushing to increase the minimum wage, and the sponsor of one of those bills will talk about it. And also on the show, the author of several crime bills on issues such as dogfighting and money laundering. But let's get started as always with our report from our Capitol correspondent, Rochelle Ritchie. Rochelle?
Hi, Donna. Well, court reporters could soon see a pay raise after the successful passing of House Bill 176. House Bill 76 also passed and would revise training requirements for social workers, professional counselors, and marriage and family therapists. But the biggest news of the day is coming from the Senate.
Senate Bill 69 made its way to the Senate floor today for a second time. The controversial bill would create a statue of Supreme Court Justice and Georgia native Clarence Thomas on the state grounds. Although a similar bill was passed last year in the Senate, it never made its way out of the House.
This native son of Georgia deserves a place of honor and recognition on our Capitol grounds, a place where future generations of Georgians can learn valuable lessons from his legacy and gain inspiration in the belief that their lofty dreams are attainable too in America, regardless of the circumstances in which they are born.
Like last session, Senator Nikki Merritt rose again to speak against the bill, but this time included Justice Thomas's wife in her objection.
Our own Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, and Governor Kemp were pressured by Mrs. Thomas' associates to overturn a free and fair election. Investigations are still ongoing. This is not the time to consider establishing a permanent monument to Justice Thomas, and we should take a pause here, members. This is not the type of shame we want to enshrine on Capitol grounds. At minimum, this bill should be tabled until such time that Justice Thomas and his wife are cleared of collaboration in this dark chapter in our history.
Just to be clear, so in the case of Anita Hill and the alleged activities that you're bringing here today regarding January 6th, Clarence Thomas has not been indicted, mentioned, or anything and related to doing any wrongdoing with the United States government or anything. Is that not correct?
Justice Thomas has not been indicted in the Anita Hill incident, nor have we fully cleared him of his wife or his participation possibly in the insurrection. That has not been cleared.
Democrats filed an amendment that would require the bill to also add a statue of another famous Georgian.
I rise with an amendment that would simply add a statue of another famous and very consequential Black Georgian to the bill, that of the Honorable John Lewis.
My question is, given the significance of Congressman Lewis's life and his service to our country, why haven't you introduced a separate bill to do
Well, I have a lot of different things, like all of us do, that we are all working on every day. And you know how it is down here with a tight session and lots of different committees and lots of important topics. We have to sort of select what we're putting forth, and not everything gets done every single day that we might all want to introduce. So now I saw a great opportunity to put this forward.
But before the vote, the amendment was suddenly withdrawn by Senator Parent, and the bill was passed 32-20 along party lines. SB 65, part of Governor Brian Kemp's policy and budget proposals, would have the state take over the healthcare insurance exchange from the federal government's program.
While still tied to the ACA rules and regulations, a state-based exchange would give the state a greater degree of control over the marketplace operations, giving states the opportunity to improve the operations, better coordinate across programs, and improve consumer outreach and marketing.
Again, the minority party objected to the bill.
We already have healthcare.gov. So if Georgia is aiming to match what that experience, we should better spend the money on the system that we have right now. It's not broken. It's working. We might need to spend some dollars to make it better. But I do think moving to a state-based system is just risky.
The bill passed 32-19.
A Senate resolution commending the service of former Senator Kelly Loeffler, as well as her organization Greater Georgia Action Incorporated, made its way to the Senate for a second time. The resolution first came up 2 weeks ago, but Democrats objected in both cases.
Isn't it true the vast majority of it is truly about Greater Georgia?
There is a lot about Greater Georgia in this and her efforts, and depending upon your lens through which you look, Senator, you can view it that way. It is honoring Senator Kelly Loeffler. I would also suggest that if in fact the new yardstick is going to be from senators or from the minority party, is going to be viewed whether or not we honor someone solely through the lens of what their political leanings are, that may be a shift in how we honor folks in this chamber.
Isn't it true that that's the exact reason I raised my question? I mean, it says recognizing and commending the work and achievements of Greater Georgia Action, Inc., as well as its chairwoman. And isn't it true that in my mind there's a distinction between the person, Senator Loeffler, and her accomplishments both in and outside the political space, and the work of Greater Georgia, which I think we can all agree is a more partisan organization.
That is my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Legislation relating to a wide range of housing issues are coming from both sides of the aisle this session. Joining me to talk about their concerns are Senator Donzella James of Atlanta, chair of the Senate Urban Affairs Committee, and Republican Representative Todd Jones of South Forsyth, chair of the House Technology and Infrastructure Innovation Committee. Welcome to Lawmakers to both of you.
Thank you.
Chairman James, let's start with you. You have several bills about housing, and let's start with SB 125. It deals with restrictions on rent regulation by local governments. What's behind that legislation?
Well, Senate Bill 125 came as a result of the crying out of citizens about the escalating prices of rent in all throughout Georgia, but especially in the urban areas. Rent is just totally out of control. Many people told me that they paid $400 a month for a one-bedroom apartment 10 years ago. And now that same apartment that they never moved out of has gone to $1,500 or up to $3,000, depending on where it is. And I investigated and found out it was true. And then there was a big group of citizens from City Hall in Atlanta that have been protesting about the rent control as well. And I worked with them to see if we could do rent control. Rent control we had many, many years ago, but before World War II. But because of everything that was going on after World War II, the state of Georgia enacted a law to ban rent control. And when they banned rent control, then that stopped local municipalities and counties from having the power to do anything to help tenants or to adjust the costs. And in 1974, the Georgia General Assembly acted on it again, and they made it against the law to ban to have rent control. So they took the ban on rent control has to be taken off in order for the cities to have local control again. And the
So
counties.
you want to take that, I'm sorry to interrupt, did you want to bring back rent control basically with this bill?
I want to bring back rent control because this bill will repeal that Georgia code to allow governments to regulate their cities' rental costs in the state of Georgia. And not only is this a problem throughout Georgia, but it's a problem throughout the nation. Without a cap placed on rent, costs are going to continue to skyrocket and cause many social issues in our communities around the state and the nation. Most rent increases come from companies out of state who don't even own property in Georgia, and often it's international companies that have come into the state of Georgia and bought up the land. So they have no vested interest in the community and what people care about. And they don't look at the fact that they're gouging the people, and if they can't afford the rent and get put out, then most of them are billionaires, and they'll use the empty apartment if they can't fill it to write it off on taxes. So
okay, I want to move on because I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about some other ones that you have, and I want to get Chairman Jones in too, because you've got a different bill. You're co-sponsored, Chairman Jones, on H.R. 98, and it's proposing a constitutional amendment for exemptions from local ad valorem taxes and homestead exemptions. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, Donna, happy to do so. That bill, I think, is critical because we want to be able to provide local governments with greater control. We want to give them flexibility, and we want to get them more competitive. And the best two examples I can give you is we want to get them competitive both inside of Georgia and then I'll say against the border states. One example could be if you're up in Northwest Georgia, we want to be able to provide to the local governments the ability to have exemptions not just on real property, but here on just personal property. So for instance, Chattanooga may have an exemption for airplanes. They may have an exemptions for boats. They may have an exemptions for trailers, et cetera. And someone in Northwest Georgia may say, you know what, I don't get that same exemption in Northwest Georgia. I'm going to go ahead and garage my property up in Chattanooga so I can get that exemption. It's cheaper for me. And the other example I can give you is I live, very close to Lake Lanier. We have 5 counties that touch Lake Lanier. As you can probably imagine, a very big marine industry. And if there is a county such as Forsyth that wants to provide an exemption, whereas maybe the other 4 do not, obviously that's going to be something that encourages someone to dock their boat and maybe even dry dock or get it repaired in Forsyth versus one of the competing counties. So this is just an opportunity to give to local government that control that they need, the flexibility to be competitive in the market.
And as a constitutional amendment, it would go to the voters if this passes.
Exactly.
Then for them to make the decision.
100%. So that's not something that would be rolled over them. The voters would say yes or no.
Okay. Get back with you in a second, Chairman James. Chairwoman James, you also have SR 37, and that deals with homeowner and condominium associations. Tell me what that bill does.
That bill will help different people who have HOAs and live in subdivisions, and they have gotten behind on their HOA fees. Right now, if they get up to $2,000 in liens against them from their HOA, they could lose their homes, and foreclosures are happening. And this is a travesty for all of Georgia because so many people have their dream homes, they work, and then we had the pandemic. And during the pandemic, many were not working or were not working and making enough money to pay their mortgage, their insurance, and their HOA. So HOA was something that they did not pay. And they had rent control monies, they had ARPA monies to come afterwards, but most of them did not qualify for it, or they were not able to receive that money. So as a result, they did, all of a sudden, they had more than 2,000 liens against their property. And many are saying that the lawyers that work for the HOAs or the HOA board members are the ones who have been taking the property and buying it. And then there are those foreign companies that are coming in and purchasing all of these homes, making Airbnbs out of them, or selling them for much more. So we have a real serious problem with HOAs. We had 5 hearings in 22, and people came from all over Georgia to express their disdain over what was going on. And of course, there are good HOAs who do good things, and so we want to make sure that we look at the unfair practices and put something on it. So this bill would do that. And then the other bill, I have a study committee to accompany that particular bill. Hopefully, if both will pass, because even if that passes, we'll need more legislation and more strength to make sure we save people's homes.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on both of those. Chairman Jones, I want to talk to you briefly. I understand you've looked into finding solutions to the workforce housing issues we've heard so much about from the governor, especially when it comes to new companies coming into the state. So what are some of the solutions and some of the bills we might see come up?
Well, I think one of the things that we're thinking about in our committee, which is the Technology and Infrastructure Innovation Committee, is really this. We're making sure that Georgia's in a place where we're skating to where the puck's going to be, not where it's at. And we're looking at all kinds of things in terms of how we're going to lead in EV, as the governor has said to us, how we're going to lead in autonomous vehicles, air taxis, healthcare in terms of the innovation there, in 3D manufacturing in terms of how it is that our manufacturing industry literally takes a flip into the 4th industrial revolution. But everything I'm talking about there requires workforce. It requires infrastructure. So as we're looking at how it is that we're going to handle that, workforce housing to us really has 2 components. I think the first component is, how is it that we can develop homes in a more efficient manner and a more timely manner? And one of the things we really need to take a look at is the 3D printing of homes. I know that sounds a little bit George Jetson, but I'm telling you right now, it's possible. We're seeing it in Europe, and we got to find a way to get our permitting processes here in Georgia to accommodate that type of, I'll say, build or print. And we can truly see, I believe, a drive down in costs and an ability to be able to put more people into homes. The second thing we need to do is understand this, is that when we're looking at workforce housing, we can't just look at how it is that we can make something cheaper or make something more affordable, but rather how is it that we can upskill our workers. So as we're moving into the next, I'll say, industrial revolution, the 4th industrial revolution, we got to be able to help our people be able to upskill themselves, get into CNC finishing, 3D CAD, things that we know that are going to be skills in demand in 2030 and 2040. This is going to lift their ability to have a greater total compensation, and we believe put them into the position to be able to have real choices in their life, and we think that's important.
Okay, well, lots of housing issues that we're going to continue to talk about this session. I want to thank you both for coming on Lawmakers to talk about them.
Thank you very much for allowing us to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, coming up, we're going to talk about public safety issues dealing with the elderly and disabled, plus the push to raise the minimum wage in Georgia.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Here's what's new this month with Passport.
Kirsten had a lot of courage. She fought for Black culture.
They could have killed you. You're exactly what we need right now. Oh my God.
What is this?
She was poisoned.
These and all your favorite shows are available with Passport. Support your PBS station and stream more with Passport on the PBS app.
We care about things that affect the lives of every American.
We are there at the front line
to get to the heart of what really matters in every issue.
This country has not seen this in 80 years.
This extraordinary moment in American history.
You're making such a huge impact.
Trust is at the heart of what we do.
One of the easiest ways to support GPB is to become a monthly GPB sustainer.
Your monthly support continues automatically month after month and supports not only the great programming that you love on GPB, but also our efforts in the community. GPB is committed to provide a trusted space for lifelong learning on the air, digitally and in person all across Georgia. All this is made possible with your monthly support. And we can't do it without you, so please donate right now at gpb.org/give. And thanks.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. We're going to focus on several bills on topics such as minimum wage, education, and public safety now. And joining us are Republican Representative Scott Hilton of Peachtree Corners and Democratic Representative Dewey McClain of Lawrenceville. Welcome to Lawmakers, gentlemen.
Great to be here.
Good to be here.
Representative McClain, let's start with you. I want to start with your bill to raise the minimum wage in Georgia, HB 241. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, HB 241 is just something we just trying to say in Georgia. $15 minimum wage is what we need to have. 10 years ago, I thought it was a great bill. Right now, I just think we may need to kind of up it a little bit, but I need to get to 15. You're looking at what the Department of Statistics says is that there's 1.2 million Georgians that make less than $15 an hour here. And you know that we talked about health care, we talk about homes, we talk about food. I mean, you know, at $7.25, which is a federal wage, but Georgia's minimum wage is $5.15. So once you think about moving that to $15 an hour, that's $31,200 a year, which, you know, you think about renting an apartment, or you've got to make 3 times as much to rent an apartment. Eggs was $7 that I bought last week. So all I'm trying to say is we've just got to do something in Georgia. And we're the #1 place to keep doing business. We got to be the #1 place to make sure we can take care of our workers.
Yeah, I know you have the Democratic, that's a Democratic bill, but are you getting support at all on this from the Republicans?
Well, you know, I want to say that I'm not getting as much traction as I would like to get from my colleagues, but if you look at the surveys that have been done, it is at least 70%, 50% of Republicans that are saying that Georgia needs to raise their minimum wage. You've got 75% of Democrats saying that, and you've got almost 70% of independents. So they're saying that we need to raise this minimum wage, but I'm just not getting as much traction. I mean, I hear a lot from small business owners saying that we'll lose money, we'll do things like that. But any state that has raised their minimum wage to $15, they hadn't lost any jobs, and you realize that people would also spend a lot of money, and they'll turn the money over. And I just think that it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an idea. We'll keep up with how that does. So, Representative Hilton, I'm going to switch to education now for both of you, actually, but I'm going to start with you, Representative Hilton. You serve as the vice chair of the House Education Committee, and one of your bills would reestablish the Office of Charter School Compliance. What's behind your interest in that, and what would it do?
That's a great question, Donna. First and foremost, this Valentine's Day, I want to wish my beautiful bride at home a happy Valentine's Day today. Earn some brownie points there. We learned 2 things from COVID. Number 1, our children are behind, and we need to get them caught up. And number 2, parents want choice in their child's education. And so that's why I'm so excited to sponsor this bill on charter schools, to give our parents more say in their child's education, to give them more flexibility and choice. And so this bill will encourage more of our local school systems to develop more innovative schools that our parents will have a chance to send their children to. And so look forward as a Vice Chairman of Education to championing that bill and giving parents more power in their child's education here in Georgia.
Can you tell us why you're reestablishing it? What happened to that office in the past?
That's a great question. Traditionally, that office has been underneath DOE, so really we're just transitioning over. So really no budget impact per se, but really meant to be under an office where it should be, an office where they'll be able to work directly with the locals to give them the incentives they need, the help they need, the platform they need to see more schools, more charter schools flourish in our state. Charter schools are public schools that have greater flexibility and how they teach kids, a little bit less restrictions in what they do. But over and over and over again, we see such great success with our charter schools. Some of our highest test scores in the state come out of our charter schools. And so would love to offer parents that opportunity, and this bill will accomplish that.
All right. Thank you for that. Representative McClain, you have signed on to an education bill I want to talk about in a moment. But first, some background on you. For those who don't know, you're a former professional football player who played with the Falcons for 5 years. And among other things, you also served as a founding member and president of the National Football League Players Association Metro Atlanta chapter. So now to the legislation.
So good.
It has bipartisan support, this legislation. HB 32, it will require high schools to utilize instant replay in championship games or possibly lose QBE funding. Is that right?
That is so right, and I was also informed by the vice chair that it came out of subcommittee today, so I feel real good about that. We've got to realize, and what you did miss is that when I left pro football, I became a high school football official for over 20 years. And, you miss things, and if you can get that opportunity to do something over, to redo it, it helps. You don't want to cheat the children. You don't want to cheat the young people. And I think that we saw what happened this year, and the Georgia High School Association has been saying that we're going to do this, but I think as lawmakers, we need to make sure that we do this. And I can't let Scott get up on me, so happy Valentine's Day, baby. Looking forward to seeing you a little later, and I will buy us something special.
Okay, promises. Okay, I think that's interesting with the instant replay, and so we'll keep up with that bill now that it's out of committee. Representative Hilton.
It's out of subcommittee, I think, Mr. Chairman.
It's out of subcommittee.
Yes.
Okay, we'll keep up with that one. So Representative Hilton, let's switch gears again. Some of your public safety bills, you have several of them. One focuses on disabled Georgians, HB 218. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, ma'am. A lot of love on this stage. I love it. One of the things my constituents told me directly when I ran for office, Scott, we care about the economy, we care about our schools, and we care about public safety and keeping our communities safe. And so one of the things I'm most passionate about is giving a voice to those who need it most and standing up for our state's most vulnerable. And that includes our elders and those with disabilities. Specifically, House Bill 218, if you're a victim of elder abuse or of any type of sexual abuse here in our state and you are unable, you have a disability of some kind, either physically or mentally, and you're not able to speak up, it allows someone to testify in a court on your behalf so that you receive the justice you deserve. And so it's a common sense piece of legislation that I'm excited to champion and look forward to getting across the finish line as we send a message loud and clear that we care about our elders here in the state, we care about those with a disability, and proud to carry that legislation here in the state.
And so I want to ask you about another one. HB 219 focuses on banks and money laundering. Tell us about that.
Well, I think everyone watching this program tonight will understand it has become all too common. We get the email, we click on the wrong link, and all of a sudden money goes from our bank account to somewhere else. And when that happens, unfortunately, we've got to refer that case to wherever the state is of the perpetrator that took your money. And so this is a change of jurisdiction that once again gives justice to our victims here in Georgia that says, okay, criminal, if you're going to steal money and take it elsewhere, we're going to be able to prosecute you here in Georgia. Right now, we've got to refer that case elsewhere outside, and there's really not much of a chance to receive justice. This bill will turn that coin over and say, we've got to be able to prosecute you here in Georgia. And so victims of financial fraud are going to finally be able to get justice here in Georgia.
Okay, so lots of coming out dealing with public safety and interesting bills from both of you on education, public safety, and dealing with the minimum wage. I want to thank you both for coming on Lawmakers today, getting your shout outs for Valentine's Day. I'm glad you were able to do that. I appreciate that. I just want to ask you if you have plans, are you leaving the show, either one of you, and have Valentine's Day plans? We've got a real quick second for that.
Well, I can only say that my Valentine plans, I will probably stop by and pick up some dinner and go home and relax, because we do have a 10 o'clock gavel time tomorrow, and I think that I've got an 8 o'clock committee meeting tomorrow. So,
okay.
So all I can say is I'm looking forward to going home and relaxing.
Representative Hilton, real quick.
Donna, I've got to go home and do some work for the people of District 48. And the best gift I'm going to give my wife tonight is I'm going to put 3 kids to bed. So looking forward to doing that.
Thanks to you both. That does it for Lawmakers today. We'll be back tomorrow for Legislative Day 19. Have a good night.